I stared at the bank statement in my hands, the numbers blurring as my world tilted on its axis. The $47,000 that should have been in our joint savings account had dwindled to a mere $9,312. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't a glitch. This was systematic theft. From me, by the one person I had trusted with everything. "Jake? Honey, I'm heading out. Girls' night with Melissa," Sarah called from the foyer, her voice light and carefree. "Don't wait up." I carefully folded the statement along its creases, sliding it back into its envelope. My hands were steady despite the hurricane raging inside me. "Have fun?" I replied, my voice unnaturally calm. The front door closed with a cheerful slam that echoed through our three-bedroom colonial in suburban Connecticut, a home we had scrimped and saved for over 5 years. A home that, according to the mortgage statement I'd found hidden in her desk drawer, now had a second line of credit against it that I'd never signed for. I'm Jake Harmon, 36, senior project manager at a construction firm in Hartford. Reliable, hard-working. The guy who shows up early and leaves late. The guy who believed his wife of 9 years when she said she wanted to manage our finances because she had a head for numbers, and I was always so busy. The guy who trusted his college sweetheart when she said all those extra hours at her marketing firm were for our future. What a goddamn fool I'd been. It started with small things. A credit card statement with charges for restaurants I'd never been to. Weekend work retreats that seemed to multiply. The way she'd change her phone screen when I walked into the room. "How are our investments doing?" I'd asked casually over dinner 3 months ago, a question I posed every few months out of cursory interest. Sarah's perfectly manicured fingers had tightened momentarily around her wine glass. "Really well, actually. That tech fund I moved us into last quarter is up 17%. She smiled, took a sip of her Cabernet, and seamlessly shifted the conversation to her latest work project. That night, I couldn't sleep. Something in her response had felt rehearsed, hollow. The next morning, I called our bank while sitting in my truck outside a construction site. "I'm sorry, Mr. Harmon, but we don't show any investment accounts linked to your profile, just your checking and savings." That was the first crack in the foundation. The next day, I found a receipt in her car while looking for my sunglasses. The Ritz-Carlton in Boston, dated during her supposed work conference in Chicago. Room service for 2, a bottle of champagne, a weekend stay. The foundation crumbled a little more. I became a detective in my own home. I installed a keystroke logger on our home computer. I recorded our conversations. I took photos of documents. And what I found was worse than I could have imagined. Sarah had been systematically draining our accounts for over 2 years. Our retirement fund that should have held close to $200,000 had been whittled down to $43,000 through a series of withdrawals, each incurring heavy penalties. Our joint savings account had been depleted through dozens of transfers to her personal account, an account I didn't even know existed until I found statements hidden in her desk. And then there were the credit cards. 3 of them, all in my name, all with balances approaching their limits. Charges for designer clothes, 5-star hotels, exotic vacations, a life she was living parallel to ours. A life with someone named Michael, whose texts I found by recovering deleted messages from her cloud backup. "I miss you. Last weekend was incredible. When can you get away from him again?" "Soon, baby. Just need to move some more money around." Jake doesn't have a clue. I remember sitting on the bathroom floor at 3 a.m. after reading those messages, my back against the cold tile, wondering if I was going to throw up or pass out. I did neither. Instead, something crystallized inside me, a cold, hard resolve that replaced the initial shock and pain. Sarah wasn't just betraying our marriage. She was methodically destroying our financial future while funding a fantasy life with another man. Using my hard work, my trust, my love as her personal ATM. That night, as I watched her sleeping peacefully beside me, this stranger who wore my wife's face, I made a decision. I wouldn't confront her. I wouldn't rage or plead or break down. That's what she would expect, and it would give her the upper hand. Number I would be smarter, more methodical, more patient than she had been. I would destroy her just as carefully as she had tried to destroy me. Jake, have you seen my Black American Express? I can't find it anywhere, Sarah asked 2 weeks later, rifling through her purse with increasing frustration. No idea, I replied, not looking up from my laptop where I was reviewing documents from Gerald Fisher, the forensic accountant I'd hired. Maybe call the company and report it missing? What I didn't tell her was that I'd already called them myself, explained that we suspected fraud, and had the card canceled. It was the first small move in a much larger game. The morning after discovering Sarah's betrayal, I'd taken the day off work and made 3 appointments. One with a divorce attorney who specialized in financial fraud cases, one with a private investigator, and one with Gerald, who came highly recommended for untangling complex financial deceptions. I want to know everything, I told each of them. Every account, every transaction, every meeting, every message. I want it all documented, verified, and court-ready. While Sarah continued her double life, I built my case with meticulous precision. The private investigator, a retired police detective named Malone, provided me with photos of Sarah and her lover, a slick-looking investment banker named Michael Deering, entering hotels, dining at expensive restaurants, shopping at high-end boutiques, all paid for with my money. Gerald discovered even more financial devastation than I'd initially found. Sarah had forged my signature on loan documents. She'd opened credit lines using my social security number. She'd even begun the process of transferring ownership shares of our home into her name alone, claiming on the paperwork that I had agreed to the transfer as part of a marriage reconciliation agreement, a document that didn't exist. This is systematic financial abuse, my attorney, Rebecca Winters, told me bluntly. And with the evidence we're gathering, we can make a case for criminal fraud as well as grounds for a very favorable divorce settlement. I nodded, feeling nothing but that same cold resolve. I want to wait a little longer. There's something else happening here. My suspicions were confirmed a week later when Malone called me. Your wife and Deering met with a real estate agent today. They're looking at properties in the Hamptons, multi-million-dollar properties. They can't afford that, I said automatically. That's the interesting part, Malone replied. From what my contact at the agency told me, they're planning to make an offer using funds from the sale of your current home. The home I'd put every spare penny into for years. The home where I'd once imagined raising children with Sarah. The home she was planning to sell out from under me. There's more, Malone continued. Deering isn't just your wife's lover. He's been investigated twice for investment fraud. Nothing stuck, but there are multiple complaints filed with the SEC. He targets wealthy women, convinces them to liquidate assets, promises huge investment returns, then disappears with the money. Everything suddenly clicked into place. Sarah wasn't just betraying me for love or lust. She was being played herself, manipulated by a professional con man who had likely done this before. She was throwing away our entire life together for a fantasy that would ultimately leave her with nothing. For one brief moment, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. I remember our second date more vividly than our wedding day. We were broke college students, and I'd saved for weeks to take Sarah to a nice restaurant. Not fancy, but a step up from campus dining. When the check came, I reached for my wallet only to find it missing. I'd left it in my dorm in my nervous rush to pick her up. The humiliation I felt in that moment was crushing, but Sarah just smiled, pulled out her own wallet, and paid without hesitation. You can get the next one, she said simply, without a trace of judgment. I fell in love with her that night. Her kindness, her understanding, her seeming lack of materialism. Later, I would learn she'd told this story differently to her friends. How she'd had to pay because poor Jake couldn't afford it. how she knew she'd always have to take care of him financially. The truth was, I'd paid her back the very next day, and then taken her out again the following weekend. But that wasn't the version of me she wanted to present to the world. There were other red flags I'd missed or ignored over the years. The way she'd undermine my accomplishments at work, her increasing obsession with status symbols, the subtle comments about friends' wealthier husbands, the growing dissatisfaction with what we had, always focusing on what we didn't. "We need to invest more aggressively," she'd started saying about 3 years ago. "Everyone else our age is so much further ahead financially. I'd worked harder, earned promotions, increased my contributions to our savings, all while she was planning her exit strategy, setting the stage for her grand escape with a man who promised her the wealthy lifestyle she craved. For 6 weeks, I lived with a woman who was actively planning to destroy me. I kissed her goodbye each morning. I made small talk over dinner. I slept beside her at night, all while systematically dismantling her plans and building my own. Working with my attorney, I secured court orders to freeze our joint assets based on evidence of fraud. I opened new accounts in my name only and redirected my paychecks there. I worked with my company's HR department to remove Sarah as a beneficiary on my life insurance and 401k. I changed the passwords on every account I could still access. I met with our bank manager and provided evidence of the forged signatures, resulting in fraud investigations being opened. I reported the identity theft to credit agencies and placed fraud alerts on my credit reports. And most importantly, I kept my face perfectly neutral, my manner untroubled. I gave Sarah absolutely no reason to suspect that I knew anything. "I'm thinking we should consider upgrading to a bigger house," she suggested one evening, about 5 weeks into my silent campaign. "This neighborhood isn't really where we belong anymore." I responded non-committally, pretending to focus on a work email. "Maybe we should look at our finances first, see what we can afford." "I've been running the numbers," she said eagerly. "With the equity in this house and the investments I've been managing, we're in a really strong position. I actually have a few properties I'd like us to look at this weekend." Properties she'd already viewed with her lover. Properties they planned to buy with my money after leaving me destitute. "Sounds great," I said. "But I might have to work Saturday. Big project deadline coming up." Her smile faltered slightly. "You work too much, Jake. We need to start enjoying the fruits of our labor." Our labor. As if she'd contributed anything beyond systematic theft. "Soon," I promised, the irony of the word not lost on me. Later that week, Gerald informed me that Sarah had tried to take out a large loan against our retirement accounts, but had been blocked by the freeze I'd put in place. Malone reported that she'd had a tense meeting with Deering at a coffee shop, their usual loving demeanor replaced by harsh whispers and agitated gestures. The noose was tightening, and she didn't even know it was there. The day of reckoning arrived on our 10th anniversary. I'd planned it meticulously with Rebecca's guidance. The timing was perfect, symbolic, but also practical. We had dinner reservations at Le Bernardin in New York, Sarah's favorite restaurant. A reservation she'd actually made herself, likely planning to give me some version of "we need to talk" news over expensive seafood. That morning, I'd called in sick to work for the first time in 3 years. Instead, I met with Rebecca to finalize everything, then with a locksmith to change the locks on our home. I withdrew $5,000 in cash, the maximum allowed, from my new private account and secured a suite at the Four Seasons, paid in advance for 2 weeks. At 6 p.m., I picked Sarah up in front of her office building. She looked stunning in a new dress I'd never seen before, her hair freshly done, diamond earrings I didn't recognize catching the light. "Happy anniversary," I said, kissing her cheek. "You look beautiful." "Thanks," she beamed. "I thought tonight deserved something special." Special indeed, I thought. The drive into the city was filled with her chatter about work, friends, plans for an upcoming charity gala. I nodded at appropriate intervals, offering minimal responses, If she noticed my reticence, she didn't show it. At the restaurant, we were seated at a corner table with a view of the dining room. Sarah ordered champagne immediately. I requested still water. "Not celebrating?" she asked with a slight frown. "Oh, I am," I assured her. "Just in my own way." After we ordered, Sarah reached across the table and took my hand, her expression shifting to one of practiced concern. "Jake, there's something I need to talk to you about." I met her eyes steadily. "Actually, Sarah, there's something I need to talk to you about first." I reached into my jacket pocket and removed an envelope, placing it on the table between us. Not divorce papers, not yet. Those would come later, served officially. This was something else. "What's this?" she asked, her hand hovering uncertainly. "Open it." Inside were photos from Malone's surveillance. Sarah and Michael entering the Ritz-Carlton. Sarah kissing Michael in his car. Sarah shopping at Tiffany's with Michael, trying on what appeared to be engagement rings. Her face drained of color as she flipped through them. "Jake, I can explain." "There's more," I said calmly, placing a second envelope on the table. This one contained bank statements, loan documents with forged signatures, credit card bills for accounts I'd never authorized. "This isn't what it looks like," she stammered, her eyes darting around the restaurant as if looking for escape. "It's exactly what it looks like," I replied. "Systematic theft, identity fraud, forgery, not to mention adultery. But here's what's really interesting, Sarah." I leaned forward slightly, keeping my voice low and controlled. "Michael Deering isn't who you think he is. He's a con man. He's done this before to at least 3 other women. He gets them to liquidate assets, promises huge returns, then disappears with everything. You're not special. You're just the next target." Her face contorted with anger. "That's a lie. You're just jealous because he's successful in ways you'll never be." I smiled slightly. "Is that why he was investigated by the SEC twice? Is that why he has complaints filed against him in 3 states? Is that why he suddenly can't access the investment opportunity he promised you when our accounts were frozen for fraud investigation?" The champagne arrived. The waiter, sensing tension, poured quickly and retreated. Sarah's hand shook as she reached for her glass, draining half of it in one gulp. "You've been spying on me," she accused. "I've been protecting myself," I corrected. "Everything you've taken has been frozen, flagged for fraud, or recovered. The home equity line of credit you forged my signature for has been reported and canceled. The credit cards in my name have been reported stolen. The retirement accounts you tried to drain have been secured." Her face shifted from shock to calculation. "Jake, listen. I made some mistakes, I know that. But we can work through this. We've been together for so long." "Save it," I cut her off. "Here's what happens now. You're going back to an empty house tonight. The locks have been changed. Your clothes and personal items have been packed and left in the garage. The joint accounts you haven't already drained are frozen pending criminal investigation." I reached into my pocket again and placed a third envelope on the table. "This contains documentation of everything I've just told you, plus the contact information for my attorney. She'll be handling all communication from this point forward." Sarah's perfectly made-up face crumpled. "You can't do this. Where am I supposed to go?" "I suggest Michael's place," I replied coolly, "though I doubt he'll want you now that you don't have access to my money anymore." As if on cue, Sarah's phone lit up with a text message. I could see Michael's name on the screen. Perfect timing, courtesy of Malone, who had been monitoring their communications and had just delivered some interesting news to Mr. Deering about his girlfriend's suddenly precarious financial situation. "You've ruined everything," she whispered, tears finally spilling down her cheeks. "No, Sarah, you did that all by yourself." I stood up, buttoning my jacket. "Happy anniversary." I walked out without looking back, leaving her with the photos, the evidence, and the bill for a dinner we would never eat. 3 months later, I sat in Rebecca's office reviewing the final divorce settlement. Sarah had initially threatened to fight, to contest everything, to drag my name through the mud. But the evidence was overwhelming, and the threat of criminal charges for fraud and identity theft had ultimately made her agreeable to Rebecca's terms. She got to keep her car and her personal possessions. She avoided jail time by agreeing to a repayment plan for the money she had managed to spend. She walked away with no alimony, no property, and a credit score that would take years to rebuild. As for Michael Deering, he'd disappeared from Sarah's life the very night of our anniversary dinner. According to Malone, he'd moved on to a divorced real estate agent in Greenwich with a substantial settlement from her ex-husband. Sarah had been nothing more than a mark to him, just as I'd been nothing more than an ATM to her. "You've come through this remarkably well, all things considered," Rebecca noted, sliding the final papers toward me for signature. Financially, she was right. I'd managed to recover or freeze most of our assets before Sarah could liquidate them. The house was mine, free and clear. My credit was slowly being restored as the fraud investigations concluded. My job was secure. In fact, I'd received a promotion during the midst of all this, a small bright spot in an otherwise dark time. Emotionally was another story. I'd lost not just my wife, but my entire concept of my life and relationship. Every memory was now tainted, every shared moment called into question. Had any of it been real? Had she ever truly loved me, or had I always just been a means to an end? I signed the divorce papers with a steady hand. "What happens to her now?" I asked, surprising myself with the question. Rebecca gave me a measured look. "Last I heard, she's working as a marketing assistant at a small firm in Hartford. Entry-level position. She's sharing an apartment with 2 roommates. Her attorney mentioned she's been seeing a therapist." I nodded, feeling nothing but a dull ache where the rage and betrayal had once burned so fiercely. "And what happens to you now, Jake?" Rebecca asked gently. It was a good question. I'd been so focused on surviving Sarah's betrayal, on making sure she didn't destroy me financially, that I hadn't given much thought to what came after. "I'm going to sell the house," I decided in that moment. "Too many memories. I'm thinking about relocating to Denver. My company has an office there, and they've approved my transfer request. A fresh start in a new place. A life rebuilt on my terms, not defined by betrayal." "That sounds like a solid plan," Rebecca said, gathering the signed papers. "You know, in all my years practicing divorce law, I've rarely seen someone handle such a devastating situation with as much discipline and foresight as you did. Most people let emotion drive their decisions in cases like this." "I couldn't afford to," I replied simply. Walking out of Rebecca's office for the last time, I felt a weight lift. Not completely. Some burdens leave permanent marks on your soul, but enough to stand straighter, breathe deeper. 2 weeks later, I received a text from an unknown number. "Jake, it's Sarah. Can we talk? Please? I'm so sorry for everything. I've realized what I lost. Michael was using me, just like you said. You were right about everything. I miss our life. I miss you." I stared at the message for a long moment, remembering the girl who had paid for dinner when I forgot my wallet. Remembering the woman who had systematically tried to destroy me while sleeping beside me every night. Then I blocked the number, put my phone away, and continued packing for Denver. Some betrayals can't be forgiven. Some lessons come at too high a price. Some chapters need to be closed completely before new ones can begin. I had lost my wife, my trust, and nearly my financial security. But I had found something perhaps more valuable. Myself. And that was something Sarah couldn't take from me, no matter how hard she tried. And that's the end of today's story. If you enjoyed it, please give this video a thumbs up and drop a comment below. Your support helps the algorithm push my content further. If you're new to the channel, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. It really helps me keep creating more stories for you. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.